The voice on the phone was short and hard. "Take your daughter out of your house. She's a rebel." On the other end of the line, a widow held the phone in shock. The man saying this to her was not a stranger shouting from the street. He was someone she had been taught to respect as a spiritual guide. An elder. A respected one. Recommended to her by another elder. Described as experienced. Described as someone who could help. His help was to tell a grieving mother to put her teenage daughter on the street. Sit with the arithmetic of that moment. The mother is alone. Her husband is dead. Her daughter is 17 years old, still in school, with no job and no way to survive on her own. And a man she has never met, speaking with the authority of God's earthly organization, tells her the loving thing, the loyal thing, is to open the door and push her only child out into the world. This is the story of a woman who spent 36 years inside the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. It is the story of what the men who led her told her to do when her family was at its weakest. And it is the story of what she did instead. Keep watching. Because the reason she refused that advice is the same reason she eventually walked out the door for good, and never came back. Part 1. The friend who came to teach guitar. To understand why this mother stopped trusting the men who led her congregation, you have to go back years before her husband ever fell ill. Back to when her daughter was 13. The girl wanted friends. That's all. She was a teenager, and she wanted the most ordinary thing a teenager can want, companions her own age. But inside that household, the ordinary want collided with a rule. The parents, in the mother's own words, were indoctrinated. So they told their daughter exactly what witness parents are trained to tell their children. Find your friends inside the organization. The ones outside are bad association. The world is dangerous. Safety is in here, with us. So the one friendship the family did approve of came from inside the walls they trusted. A young man in the congregation, 20 years old, approached the 13-year-old girl. He offered to be her friend. And because he was a brother, because he carried the label that was supposed to guarantee safety, the parents saw no danger at all. Think about how the trap is built. The very rule meant to protect the child, only associate with those inside, is the rule that delivered a grown man to a little girl's door and called it wholesome. The girl had been assigned to play a musical instrument at school. She'd chosen the guitar. She struggled with it. The chords wouldn't come. The music wouldn't sit right under her fingers. And the 20-year-old brother offered to teach her. The parents set what they believed were careful boundaries. He could only come when the mother was home from her part-time job. The grandfather, who lived right next door, was told to keep watch. Leave the door open, the mother told her daughter. If I'm not back yet, leave the door open. They did everything the careful ones do. And it wasn't enough. One afternoon, the mother came through the shared gate and found her father waiting for her. He told her what he had just seen through the doorway. The young man had his arms around her daughter. She walked in on it. Her 13-year-old, held in the arms of a grown man. She demanded to know what was happening. He told her not to worry. Nothing was happening, he said, nothing at all. She was not interested in his reassurance. She told him to get out of her house. Not tomorrow. Not later. When the man was gone, she turned to her daughter and asked what had happened. The girl said she'd been telling him about a problem, something that was weighing on her, and he had started holding her, taking her hands. It made her uncomfortable. She hadn't known what to do. The mother made a decision on the spot. That young man would never enter her home again. He'd left his guitar behind. She told him to come collect it, or she would deliver it to his house herself. She wanted no reason for him ever to return. And her daughter said something a mother does not forget. She said she wanted friends. Just friends. Nothing more. But this one made her uncomfortable. He looked at her strangely, she said. I don't like it. Here is the first fracture in the foundation. The mother protected her daughter, as any mother would. But the father, still loyal to the framework, insisted the girl be cordial to the man. If she saw him at the Kingdom Hall, she should greet him. Because he was a brother. A brother. The same category that was supposed to guarantee the child's safety was now being invoked to force a frightened girl to be polite to the man who had frightened her. The label protected him twice, once when it opened the door, and again when it demanded her courtesy. Remember this pattern. It is the pattern of the entire story. Part 2. The Isolation. That episode changed something in the girl. She began to question. Not the small things, the whole architecture of the thing. She questioned the teachings themselves. And above all, she resented the rule that kept her walled off from her classmates, the rule that had failed her so badly when it mattered. The mother watched her daughter grow more and more isolated. The sisters her own age in the congregation kept their distance, out of envy, the mother believed. And so here was the cruel result. Inside the organization, the very place the girl had been ordered to find her friends, she had almost none. The rule promised community and delivered loneliness. And the mother recognized that loneliness, because she had lived it herself. She said it to her husband directly. Remember how sad and lonely our youth was. She had spent hers isolated, on the outside of the ordinary joys of being young. And she made a decision. She did not want to hand that same inheritance down to her daughter. So the parents did something quiet and, within their world, almost radical. They broke from the script. They would let their girl befriend her schoolmates, but they would know exactly who those friends were. As the daughter grew older and finished school later in the day, the mother arranged her own schedule to pick her up, to meet the boys and girls her daughter spent her hours with. She would supervise, she would know the names and the faces, but she would not condemn her child to the same isolation she had endured. Then, at 15, a boy pursued her. And here the parents snapped back to the doctrine, reflexively, almost helplessly. They opposed it. Because the girl had been baptized at 11 years old. And a baptized witness cannot have a romantic relationship with someone outside the organization. A worldly person. It was the same rule the mother herself had lived under as a young woman. The rule that had helped make her own youth so lonely. So the door was closed on the boy from outside. Slammed, in fact. The very same door that had been held wide open for the grown man from inside. Hold that contradiction in your mind. A 20-year-old brother who put his hands on a 13-year-old was tolerated, even defended. A teenage boy from school who simply liked their daughter was forbidden. The dividing line was never safety. The dividing line was membership. That is the engine of everything that follows. Now the story turns, and it turns towards suffering. The husband was sick. He had arthritis, a severe and progressive form. An atrophy that deformed part of his face. Chronic, grinding pain. A body that was slowly, steadily failing him, and a disease that would only advance. But the mother believed something else accelerated it. Pressure. Because even as her husband's health was collapsing, the traveling overseers kept coming, and every visit carried the same message. Take on more. Take on more privileges. Do more for the organization. Understand who this man was. He had been an elder, and by his wife's account, a rare kind. Reasonable. Loving. Someone who genuinely, personally cared about the people in his congregation. Her model of what an elder was supposed to be. His illness meant he could no longer physically carry the responsibilities of an elder, so he did the honest thing. He resigned. And still they pressed. Visit after visit. Take on privileges. Until, worn down, he accepted the role of ministerial servant, telling his wife that he knew how much work the elders carried, and he wanted to help them. Even dying, his instinct was to lighten someone else's load. The mother believes that relentless pressure helped push the disease forward faster than it should have gone. That the institution, which asks and asks and asks, helped burn down a man who had nothing left to give but gave anyway. In early 2019, he collapsed. 15 days in a private clinic, on oxygen, critically ill. The family couldn't afford to keep paying. Private care drains a household fast, so in April, he was moved to the public hospital. And there he stayed for nearly 6 months. In the intensive care unit. Intubated. Connected to a ventilator the entire time. Now watch very carefully who showed up. Their close family came. A few elderly sisters came. Women who, out of the little they had, brought small envelopes of money and pressed them quietly into the family's hands. The mother remembers those women to this day with deep tenderness, the poorest among them, giving what they could. Some younger sisters came too, to sit with them, to keep them company through the waiting. But the elders, the men who led that congregation, the men who had pressed a dying man to take on more work right up to the edge of the grave, where were they? They were absent. They appeared at the hospital only when the traveling overseer was in town, only when there was someone above them to perform for. Beyond that, nothing. They gave the family no emotional support, no spiritual support, and certainly nothing material. The shepherds were nowhere near the sheep. So ask the question the story keeps forcing us to ask. Who actually held this family up? Their relatives. And the company where the mother worked, which gave her the freedom to rush to the hospital whenever she was allowed in to see her husband. Her co-workers, worldly people, every one of them, carried her through. Not her congregation. And the daughter, 17 years old now, watching her father disappear inside a machine. Who held her through those months? Her schoolmates, the worldly friends, the bad association she had been warned about her whole life. They were the ones who carried her emotionally through the worst days she had ever known. Not one brother from the congregation stood beside her. And the painful truth underneath it all, she was only there to accompany her parents. She had already told them, while her father was still alive and could still hear her, that she no longer felt what they felt. That Jehovah no longer felt like a real person to her. Her father, reasonable to the very end, told her they would not force her. Come when you want to, he said. When you don't, stay home. And so she did. He gave his own daughter the one thing the organization would later refuse to give, the freedom to believe, or not, without punishment. In October, he died. I want to slow down here. Because what happened at this man's funeral is the emotional center of the entire story, and it deserves room to breathe. You need to understand how Jehovah's Witnesses conduct a funeral. Their funerals are austere, deliberately plain. No floral arrangements. The mother describes it in the barest words she can find: dry. A body, a room, a talk that steers quickly toward the organization's doctrine, and very little warmth. There. So picture it. A father has died. A husband of many years is gone. And by the customs of the faith he served, the room is meant to stay empty of color, empty of the small, beautiful gestures that human beings use to say, this person mattered, this loss is real. And then the doors open. The only people who brought flowers were her daughter's schoolmates. The worldly ones. The bad association. And here is the sharpest, most devastating irony in the entire account. The family of that boy, the 15-year-old suitor the parents had rejected, forbidden, turned away because he came from outside, that family brought the wreaths. They brought the coronas, the flowers. They stepped forward and adorned the coffin of a man they were never allowed to be close to. Let that image sit with you. The casket that the faith wanted bare. And around it, dressing it with dignity, the flowers of the very people that faith had labeled dangerous. The outsiders draped a father's coffin in beauty while the brothers stayed home. The schoolmates never left the daughter's side. Not while her father was sick. Not when they buried him. Not in the weeks after, when the grief settled in and the house felt empty. They kept coming to visit her, to sit with her, to console her. The worldly friends did what the congregation would not. If you have ever watched a community claim to be the truest expression of love on earth, and then watched it vanish at the exact moment love was required, you already understand this funeral. You've seen your own version of it. Then it was just the two of them. A widow and her daughter, beginning a life alone. And here the mother names something that countless women who leave this organization describe in almost identical words. When a woman is on her own, no husband, no male head of the household, the elders move in. They want to become the head of her. To give her orders. To direct a life that no longer has a man in it to direct it for them. She had never been that kind of woman. Independent by nature. Her husband had known that about her from the start and had made his peace with it. When something was wrong, she said so. Out loud. And for many years, she'd had a filter for the ugly things she saw inside the congregation. That filter was her husband. He had been her model of what an elder should be. Loving, reasonable, fair. So when she saw something that disturbed her, she brought it to him. And he gave her the answer the organization trains all of its people to give. Jehovah, in his due time, will bring justice. You see ugly things? Yes. You are told to tolerate them out of love. The organization is perfect. It is the members who are imperfect. That is the machinery by which a person learns to swallow, and swallow, and swallow. But now her husband was gone. The filter was gone with him. And for the first time, she was about to carry her problems directly to the men themselves, with no one standing between her and what they really were. Because the daughter was struggling. In the raw wake of losing her father, she began spending time with two young men the mother describes as having bad habits. The mother told her to stay away from them. The girl, grieving and 17, wasn't listening. And so the mother did the only thing 36 years had trained her to do. She sought help from the congregation. Through a trusted relative, himself an elder, she was pointed toward a brother in her own congregation. He's experienced with these situations, she was told. He can help you. She believed that. She had every reason to. She was about to learn what that help looked like. It was the middle of the pandemic, so she couldn't meet him in person. She called him on the phone. She laid out the whole situation honestly, a grieving teenager acting out after the sudden loss of her father, a mother frightened of losing her. And his answer was the sentence this entire video is built around. You must take your daughter out of your house, because she is a rebel. The mother was stunned. The suggestion struck her as cruel. Plainly, obviously cruel. How was she supposed to put her own daughter on the street? The girl was a minor. She didn't work. How would she survive out there? She would be throwing her child into a world she had no preparation to face, precisely because the organization had spent years keeping her from it. And there was something the mother understood that the elder either didn't know or didn't care to consider. By this point, the daughter had a boyfriend the mother wasn't yet aware of. If she threw the girl out of the house, there was only one place she would go, straight to that boy's home. So the advice wasn't merely cruel. It was self-defeating on its own terms. It was a direct path to the very outcome the organization claimed it existed to prevent. Cast out the child to protect her purity, and you deliver her into exactly the situation you feared. The logic collapses the moment you look at it. She refused. And then came the moment that turned a simple refusal into an awakening. Because she was told, as every witness is told, where she was permitted to look for help. The literature, the magazines, the publications. It's all in there. The spiritual food that Jehovah lovingly provides. And above all, do not look for information anywhere else. Outside sources will only lead you astray. So the rebel disobeyed, but not in the way they always warn about. She did not go hunting for so-called apostate material. She went looking for something else entirely. Help raising a teenager. Psychological help. Real, practical guidance. Because she could see her daughter slipping through her fingers, and unlike the elder on the phone, she actually understood why. The stress the girl had lived under for years. Her father's long illness and death. The suffocating pressure of the congregation. And a mother so thoroughly indoctrinated that her deepest fear was losing her child to the world. She found videos online. A psychologist who specialized in families and adolescence. She watched a 2-hour video, and by the end of it, something in her had shifted. Because in that video, she recognized a failure, but not the failure the elder had named. A real one, her own. All those years she had poured into the organization. The meetings. The field service. The Bible studies she personally conducted. She had even brought 2 people to baptism. And it struck her, with force, that every hour spent on all of that was an hour she had not given to her own daughter. So she changed. She started listening instead of lecturing. Talking with her girl instead of scolding her. And slowly, the relationship began to heal. She arrived at the truth the elder had gotten exactly, perfectly backwards. Her daughter did not need to be thrown out. She needed to be pulled close. This was the moment the girl needed her mother most in the entire world, and the counsel from God's organization had been to abandon her at precisely that moment. She needed to be held through the storm of adolescence, not exiled into it. Things were getting better. And then, in 2021, still in the grip of the pandemic, the daughter asked permission to attend a party. She'd graduated in 2020, a graduation with no celebration at all, like so many in that strange, locked-down year. Now a classmate wanted to host a gathering, finally, to celebrate all of them, late but heartfelt. The mother agreed, with a condition. "You can go, but I will pick you up myself." And she did exactly that. Dropped her off, collected her, watched over her. But days later, through social media, the mother learned the truth about that party. It had been a birthday celebration. And if you know this religion, you know what it means for a Jehovah's Witness to attend a birthday. It is forbidden. To the still indoctrinated mother, the discovery landed as a hard blow, and worse, as a betrayal, because her daughter had concealed it from her. So, weeping, desperate for someone to help her hold the line, she went to a second elder. A more reasonable one, she'd been told. She laid the whole situation before him. And this second elder told her, "You are not raising your daughter as you should. You have not been strict enough. She lives under your roof, therefore she must attend meetings with you and do as you say." And then he offered the tell. "If you can't do it," he said, "with your permission, I'll do it. I'll do it." As if the child were his to manage. As if a grieving mother's authority over her own daughter were something to be handed off to a man from the Kingdom Hall the moment she showed a crack. She declined. She would handle her own daughter. "Thank you very much." Then she did what she was learning to do. She went and researched, on the official website of course, staying obediently within the approved boundaries, how she might keep helping her child. And she found an article. Its title was about how children can honor their parents. And buried at the very end of it, she found a sentence that stopped her cold. It said that a parent should not oppose their children if those children choose not to follow the parent's religion. That you must respect their decision. Read that again, and then hold it up next to what the elders had been telling her. Because this is the checkmate. The organization's own published literature, the material on its own official website, told her to respect her child's choice. And the organization's own elders, its living representatives, the men who spoke with its authority to her face, told her the exact opposite. Throw your daughter into the street. Do it, or you are not loyal to Jehovah. So which is the real organization? The gentle words on the public website, or the cold instruction whispered down the phone line? The answer is the uncomfortable one. The public literature is the face the organization shows to the world. Polished, reasonable, quotable. The private counsel is what it actually does behind closed doors, where no outsider is watching and no article will ever be published. The left hand did not know what the right hand was doing. Or worse, the public rule was never anything but a mask for what the elders practiced in private. She brought the article back to that same elder, the one who had told her that if she didn't remove her daughter from the house, she was placing her daughter above God. She held the two things side by side. And she said the sentence that became the hinge of her entire life. "This is not from God. How am I supposed to do that to my daughter? This comes from him, the adversary." Here is why she could not unsee it once she had seen it. In 36 years inside, she had watched other parents obey. Parents who listened to the elders and did the things she refused to do, who put their own children out. And she had seen where some of those children ended up. She saw two cases in which the young people took their own lives. I want to say that plainly and then let it stand, because it is the gravest thing in this account. Two young people, cast out by parents who believed they were being loyal to God, did not survive it. And the mother's own daughter later confessed to her that she, too, had carried those same dark thoughts, precisely because of the pressure the family and the congregation had pressed onto her from the age of 13, from the moment she first started noticing the things that did not add up. That is the weight behind this mother's refusal. This was not a woman being difficult or rebellious. This was a woman who had seen, with her own eyes, the body count of obedience. She simply hadn't let herself feel the full horror of it while the indoctrination still held. You don't feel it completely, she says, until you live it in your own flesh. And then, at the very moment the second elder was pressing her to expel her daughter, both mother and daughter caught COVID. Late 2021 into early 2022. They nursed each other through the illness, alone. In the same house the elder had told her to break apart. And once again, Who supported them? Their close family. Her co-workers, again, the wife of a colleague quietly deposited money into her account for medicine. And the congregation, which knew perfectly well they were both sick, ignored them completely. There is one more detail she insisted on putting on the record, and it closes the circle back to where this story began. When she'd first learned her daughter had become the girlfriend of that outside boy, she had done the dutiful thing and gone to the elders, because she knew what it meant for a baptized person to date someone from outside. The elders met with her first, and she told them the full history. She told them about the 20-year-old brother who had put his arms around her daughter when the girl was 13. And the elders' response? They told her that young man, the one who had overstepped with a child, was better than her daughter's current boyfriend, because he was a servant of Jehovah. And they found it strange, they said, that the parents had never supported that relationship. Sit with that a moment. A grown man had put his hands on a 13-year-old girl, and the elders' considered assessment, years later, was that he was the preferable match, because he held the right membership status. The card in his pocket outweighed the conduct of his hands. Every single time, the label won. That is not an accident in this system. It is the system. Quarantine, she kept watching videos, and one of them reached her in a way she could not shake. It was the testimony of a young woman whose parents had obeyed the elders, had actually done the thing this mother refused to do, and put their daughter out on the street. They told the girl that because she had abandoned Jehovah, she was now dead to them. The young woman survived only because relatives took her in, and because she found work at a cafe and clawed her way forward alone. That video struck the mother with full force, because it was proof, living proof, of the thing she had spent so long resisting. That parents really do abandon their children to survive alone outside. That this cruelty was not theoretical. It was real, and it was common, and she had been one instruction away from a version of it herself. And she knew, with total certainty now, this does not come from God. She had always believed in a loving father, one who cares for his children, who helps them correct their mistakes rather than discarding them like something broken. And her daughter had committed no grave sin at all. Because in that world, the only truly unforgivable act is to contradict, or even to quietly disagree with, the governing body. One video led to another. And in that season of unraveling, she discovered that a certain book existed. The Elder's Manual. Shepherd the Flock of God. Now, here is what makes this discovery land the way it does. That manual is confidential. Deliberately, structurally secret. It is written for the eyes of elders only, and the organization goes to remarkable lengths to keep it that way. This book is highly confidential and not to be shared with other congregation members. The rules around it are almost hard to believe. An elder may request that a brother bind the manual, but only provided the elder watches to ensure that the brother does not read it. And it goes further than that. Sisters and non-witnesses are not permitted to do that binding work at all. Not only the contents of the manual, but its very existence, is to be kept secret from the women of the congregation. Jehovah's Witnesses +2. Think about what that means for the ordinary member. There is a rule book that governs how you will be judged, how your sins will be handled, how you can be cast out from everyone you love, and you are not allowed to read it. You are not even, in the case of the women, supposed to know it exists. And this mother, without ever setting out to, ended up holding a copy in her own home. Because her late husband, an elder, had kept a plastic bin full of literature, duplicate books, old outlines from talks he had delivered over the years. As she began clearing out the publications she no longer trusted, she opened that bin. And there it was. The secret book. So she sat down, and she read the thing she was never meant to see. What she found in the chapter dealing with the disfellowshipped left her indignant. She read that when someone facing a judicial committee threatens to bring a lawyer, or threatens to report the elders are counseled to deny that a judicial committee is even taking place. And further on, if the person warns that the press or a journalist is coming, the elders are advised to tell them they'll take down their information and get back to them. Something, she notes dryly, that never actually happens. Deny the process to anyone who might challenge it. Stall the press with a promise you have no intention of keeping. This was not the loving spiritual shepherding she had been sold for 36 years. This was a manual for managing liability. And reading it, in her own living room, with her own dead husband's name on the shelf, that was the end. All of it, finally, made her wake up. At the end of January, she blocked everyone. Every elder. She wanted nothing more to do with any of them. They had assigned her something for that month, some task in the congregation, and she canceled it. When the elder in charge asked her why, she gave him 3 words. Personal reasons. And then she blocked him too. She knew exactly what they would say if she gave them the opening, so she simply never gave it. They sent brothers to call her, the way they always do when someone goes quiet. To some of them, she was gentle, told them kindly not to worry. They had assumed she'd fallen into depression over her husband's death, and she let them know she was all right. That her husband had done good work as a husband and a father, and that she and her daughter now lived on the beautiful memories, not the painful ones. They chose to remember the good man he was, not the terrible months at the end. But to the ones she genuinely trusted, she told the truth. The real reasons. She would not allow anyone to tell her how to raise her daughter. From now on she would take her guidance from God and from her own conscience, from her own decisions as a mother. And no man, no elder, no organization would ever dictate that to her again. And now, the part of this story that makes all the suffering bearable to hear. Today, that daughter is nearly 23 years old. She is still with the boy she met at 15, the one from outside, the one they forbade, and they have plans to marry. She is working. She is studying at university. She speaks 2 languages. Her mother pulled her back from the very edge, and did it the right way. Not by throwing her out, but by holding her close. Not with threats, but with real help, real listening, real love. They survived the adolescence together, mother and daughter, side by side. And the mother is careful, insistent, even, about why her daughter turned out to be a good person. It was not the organization. It was the values her own parents had raised her with. Honesty. Respect for others. Hard work. Those things, she says, do not come from a religion. They come from how you are raised, from the love inside a home. The organization had tried to take credit for the fruit of a tree it had spent years trying to cut down. So let us name, clearly and without flinching, what this one woman's story actually exposes about the system she escaped. A grown man puts his arms around a 13-year-old girl. And years later, the elders, the spiritual judges of that community, rate him as the better suitor, because he is a servant of Jehovah. The conclusion is unavoidable. Membership status matters more than conduct. The label matters more than the child. A dying man is pressured to take on more and more responsibility, right up to the point where his own wife believes it hastened his death. And when he finally lies intubated in an intensive care unit for 6 months, the men who pressured him appear only when a higher-ranking official is watching. The shepherding was always a performance for the ones above, never a service to the ones below. A widow asks for help with a grieving teenager, and 2 separate elders, independently, on 2 separate occasions, tell her to put her child out on the street. And when she checks the organization's own official website, she finds it advising the exact opposite: respect your child's decision. The public words and the private instructions do not match. One of them is a mask. And she had watched, across 36 years, what happens to the children of the parents who obeyed the private instruction instead of the public words. She had counted the cost in human lives. Now, the mother is careful here, and so will I be. Her conclusion is not that every person inside is cruel. She is emphatic about the opposite. She met beautiful people in there, genuinely kind, loving human beings she still carries in her heart to this day. Those elderly sisters with their little envelopes. The friends who sat with her. She insists that the members are victims too, defending what they sincerely believe is the truth, exactly as she herself once did. That is why, when witnesses flood her social media today, telling her she will be destroyed at Armageddon, even accusing her, a widow, of adultery, because in their minds only a grave sin could explain someone leaving, she does not hate them. She understands them. She was them. She defended this same organization once, with the same certainty, the same fire. She simply knows something now that they do not yet know. Her fight, she says, is not against the members at all. It is against an institution that presents to the world an appearance of love and of kindness, and is something colder and harder underneath. For 36 years, this woman was told that the answers were always inside. Inside the literature. inside the men who led her. And that to look anywhere else, to trust her own conscience, her own eyes, her own mother's heart, would only lead her astray. But when her family reached its lowest point, a husband dying in a hospital bed, a daughter drowning in grief, the people inside gave her nothing. And the men she had trusted with her spiritual life told her to commit an act of abandonment that she recognized, all the way down in her bones, as simple cruelty. It was the people outside, the worldly friends, the rejected suitor's family, her own co-workers, who showed up. With flowers. With envelopes. With their presence. With love that asked for nothing back. She refused the advice. She chose her daughter. And in refusing, she found the door out. Now I want to turn this to you, before we close. Have you ever had to choose between a religious rule and the love you have for your own family? Between what an organization demanded and what your heart already knew was right? Tell us in the comments. Your story might be the exact thing that helps someone else watching realize they are not alone, and that they are not crazy for feeling the way they feel. And if this testimony reached you, do one thing for the channel. Hit that like button and subscribe so these stories keep finding the people who need to hear the most. Because this mother's entire lesson fits into a single line. When they told her to throw her own child away and called it loyalty to God, she looked at it clearly and she understood. That advice never came from God. Wake up and stay free.